Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the KPC podcast. I'm Karsan Turner.
And I'm Hannah Thurman.
Today we have quite the amount of stories to talk about. We're going to be talking about the feud between Jimmy Kimmel, Sean Hannity. We're also going to be talking about a new spending bill that has passed recently. But first, we have just a small good news story from Hannah. So go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, good news is that Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat in Congress, has given birth. She gave birth to a baby girl, and she is actually the first woman in Congress to do so. So that's super exciting, and I'm really excited to see. She's working with Congress members to see if she can maybe pass some bills that would allow female Congresswomen, if there are more women that are pregnant during session or while they're in Congress, to bring their children or babies onto the Congress floor. So that's exciting, and I think it's really cool surprising that she's the first woman, but it's cool to see.
Yeah.
So that's a little fun story to start off.
I thought that was cool because usually, I encourage, or women will take their leave to, I think it's important for them to take that time to raise their child. So I haven't seen a situation where they still want to actually lead that double life where they go to work and also bring their baby to them. And I think if, as long as it's healthy for the child and the woman is more than willing to put in the hours, because raising a kid, that's no easy task. Right. So I applaud her for wanting to take on that huge challenge. And I think that's good that she wants to encourage other women who are interested in it to doing that same task as well. So
I agree. Okay, so to start off, or I guess not really start off, but to talk about some Kansas things that are happening. So the Lawrence Journal World reported that there was a $522 million school funding increase bill sent to the governor. And Jeff Coyler said that he released a statement saying that he intends to sign the bill. This bill would go towards K through 12 funding and would be phased out over the span of 5 years. So it passed in the Senate and the House, and the House actually will regroup. So their session's over. So this was the last chance for them to pass a funding bill. It'll regroup on April 26th, but the Senate will remain working. But I'm excited to see how that happens or what happens with that, just because being from out of state, all I heard about Kansas government and our last governor here is that education funding is just gone to hell. It's just been bad. It's never been good, and there's just been a lot of cuts. And so I'm interested because that's a lot of money. But as I was saying, we were talking about in my last journalism class that some people are saying that that's just not enough. So I would like to look at the numbers on that one to see how much has been cut and how much this is giving back. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it might not be enough as the teachers claim, but it is a good starting point. Being in Kansas, I know all throughout my high school career, teachers talked about, Sam Brownback and the amount of cutbacks that we had to face. And, kind of like you said, there are the teachers who have been protesting because they haven't been paid enough. I'm surprised that didn't start in Kansas with Brownback. So it's good to see that we're actually taking steps to preventing teachers from walking out. And like you said, it would be interesting to actually look at the bill and see where all the money's going to be going to. But it's just good to see that Kansas is responding before we receive any huge backlash. So
yeah, I agree. But at the same time, do you think that this could possibly cause teachers to start walking out if they are getting frustrated because maybe they had asked for more funding? I think if they don't get that could...
I'm not too sure. Since they haven't walked out in the past 6 years since Brownback has been in office, it's like they've already gone through the worst part. Yeah. So I don't see it happening. If they do, I wouldn't agree with the walkouts because right now we're at that point where we're starting to fix it. So I think it wouldn't be a good move for teachers to walk out, So maybe if they waited a couple years and then noticed that they weren't seeing any of the changes.
After the 5 years.
Yeah.
I agree.
So speaking of news, there's no really easy way to introduce this. So I've talked about Jimmy Kimmel in not so kind terms because he keeps messing up, and him and his writing staff really made a very, very low blow on April 3rd. So during his unfunny monologue, which there's this new thing where Jimmy Kimmel's not even trying to make jokes. He just makes blatant attacks at people he doesn't like. And I'm getting quite frankly, I'm sick of it. So he made fun of Melania Trump, not because of anything she's specifically done, but because of the way that she talks. He just openly mocked her accent, and that was apparently their joke during their monologue on it was post-Easter. She was reading a book, and he just mocked her accent. Fox News reporter Sean Hannity was absolutely not a fan of what had happened, so he dedicated a whole episode of his show responding to Jimmy Kimmel and calling him out on a bunch of things he did. He really hit home in the report on how perverted he is. As you know, he was in charge of the Me Too movement during the Oscars performance, but we, in an earlier episode, called out the hypocrisy of Kimmel having that segment where he asked women to touch his pants. He has way more shows or way more segments where he's doing equally, if not more, perverse things. He has a thing where he's pretending that he has an erection, so he's chasing women, asking if size is important. He has another segment where he's just asking women if they'll have sex with him, and then he had another one where he was asking women to show him their underwear. So a lot of hypocrisy from there, and Sean Hannity really hit hard on that. He also mentioned that he doesn't take sexual assault or anything like that lightly. He was one of the few Republicans and conservatives who was speaking out against Roy Moore for all of the allegations, saying that he wasn't going to vote for him simply because of it. So I'm glad to know that Hannity's at least consistent on his point. So Jimmy Kimmel responds. Of course, he takes the same approach that he took when calling out Melania Trump, which was just making fun of Sean Hannity. He made this joke about how Sean Hannity hasn't gotten an erection when Obama was president, but now that Trump's our president, he can't stop having an erection, which just proves the point that Sean Hannity was making, that Jimmy Kimmel is perverted and disgusting. So he really hits home on that. And then Sean Hannity said something like, oh, Jimmy Kimmel's being an ass clown. Then Kimmel spent the last half of his argument saying, oh, what is this ass clown? What type of weird fetish do you have, Sean Hannity? Which again, still just proves the point that Kimmel is a perverted, disgusting person. The feud took over on Twitter, which basically got to the point where Kimmel sent a photoshopped image of two guys having sex. One guy was a clown, the other was just a guy with Sean Hannity's face, which I kind of like how he says that he's a liberal, which in broader terms means that he is open to things like same-sex marriage and then diversity and inclusion, but he doesn't hesitate to make fun of Melania Trump's accent, and then also doesn't hesitate to make fun of Sean Hannity, calling him gay, basically, which two complete low blows. He also had this apology where he was like, I've been getting death threats and stuff like that. You know, I've noticed this trend where when someone's you usually know when someone's in the wrong in an argument when they respond by playing, by playing the victim card. Jimmy Kimmel was just in the complete wrong and acted like a complete idiot. And I don't think this is going to stop at all. But
yeah, I think that you make a really good point. I didn't even think about this, but when you said that, you know, being a liberal, you are more open, supposedly, to inclusion and people coming in from different areas, from different backgrounds. And the fact that he did, I mean, that's pretty much insulting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complete low blow.
By making fun of her accent, and that goes against what you'd think that a liberal should respect. It doesn't. We should be proud that we have a first lady that comes from a different background. I think that's really cool.
The other thing is she speaks 5 languages, so sorry that she can't perfect her English accent. She has 4 other languages to attend to, but
and even if she has a background in modeling or whatever it is, like she's still, I still think it's cool that she has a different background, and it's very, very offensive that he would think that's humorous, because it's just not.
You bring up the modeling thing. The late night comedians also were condemning her because, why would we want a half-naked woman as our first lady? But aren't they supposed to be the party that says don't slut shame? So what are they slut shaming? And then I also noticed, you know, Stephen Colbert has that one comment where he said, Donald Trump's mouth is just Vladimir Putin's blank holster, which, again, just making fun of him for this gay conspiracy when they're supposed to be the party that wouldn't stoop to that level. So, yeah, late night comedy is just no longer comedy. It's just basically middle school level insults at this point, and it's just disgusting. So yes.
So Hannity hasn't officially, because I'm looking at a CBS News article that came out at 1 today,
Mm-hmm.
saying that he will address comments by Jimmy Kimmel on a show tonight with a full and comprehensive response.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that his whole show will go to that tonight?
I think so. And that's something we'll probably follow up on Friday, because I'm interested to see his response. Because even watching the episode where he originally responded to it, he wasn't stooping low. He wasn't hitting low blows like Kimmel was doing. And I was actually surprised by how mature Sean Hannity was being about the whole thing. So I honestly applaud him for going after Kimmel and pointing out that blatant hypocrisy. So
has Kimmel apologized for mocking?
Yeah, so he kind of apologized,
but then he spun it.
He made he riddled it with things
rather
like
than just being, I made a dumb mistake and thought it was humorous, and that's not, and that's on me.
Yeah, so
that is extremely frustrating.
Yeah,
and honestly, that makes me very upset, because I think that looks really bad on a lot of liberals' sides. If you think about it, there's a lot of conservatives that I look to in a bad light, and then that makes me think that a lot more conservatives are like that, which they're not.
Right.
And I think that that's how a lot of conservatives feel about liberals, because so many of them are Hollywood people or talk show hosts like Jimmy Kimmel, and sometimes they do stupid things like this.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a lot of people think that all of us are like that on, like, the more left side. But
well, I wouldn't even categorize Jimmy Kimmel or even the other late night comedians as liberals, because as I said, liberal is supposed to mean free thinking, open-minded. It's like they are so far left. Well, there's this term whenever people say leftists or the left, they're not talking about liberals. They're talking about, it's almost like you don't talk, like there's a difference between conservatives and then like the alt-right. So like they are so left that it has made them regressive and closed-minded instead of progressive. And it's just
it's disappointing to see. I wish we could all get along, but life is not that simple. All right. Well, in less entertainment news, CNN, well, I guess it's still entertainment because it's Facebook, but Mark Zuckerberg will testify in front of Congress in the upcoming week after the data breach that was a couple weeks ago, reported CNN. So he is going to appear before a joint hearing of the Senate Judiciary and Commerce Committees, actually Tuesday afternoon, followed by another committee, the House and Energy and Commerce Committee, hearing the following morning. So that'll be Wednesday. So the Senate hearing on Tuesday will take place at 2:15, and then the next meeting will take place at 10 a.m. The following day. So we're going to see what Zuckerberg has to say about this breach. It's interesting because the CNN article that I was reading, he said that, I think it must have been in some interview, but he was saying that Facebook will never be completely able to be safe from privacy breaches, and it's going to be like a never-ending battle to ensure privacy for everyone.
Yeah.
But I also read, I believe that Facebook will be announcing who has been affected by the breach.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I don't know how they're going to do that. Hopefully we don't get an email. But yeah, he said that he's completely willing to testify. I don't really understand what's going to come from this.
Yeah.
I'll be interesting to see. I kind of want to watch them because I'm interested to see what questions they ask him.
Yeah.
Since it does seem like he's not really trying to hide anything, because he blatantly said it's going to be a never-ending battle. I cannot promise complete privacy for people.
I absolutely do not trust Mark Zuckerberg in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I think we should have all seen this coming when we watched The Social Network. I think people forgot that the whole plot of it was how Mark Zuckerberg screwed over his best friend to become this billionaire, one of the most powerful people. And I honestly think it's going to be one of those things where he goes in front of the camera, says the right type of things, makes everyone feel comfortable, then he gets away, and then he just kind of goes back into doing it. And I actually saw not too long ago an interview with an ex-VP of a certain branch of Facebook, and he was just telling people to delete their Facebook because the amount of data they have on people is dangerous. And he even said a specific quote. It was like, and those of you who think you're too smart to or who think you can outsmart the system, you're the most targeted one, so you need to delete your Facebook. And I'm very wary about Facebook. I actually deleted my Facebook app, and I don't
have my app anymore. I still have my account.
I do too.
But I don't use Facebook anymore. I'll like a post here and there if I go on it on my computer, but I don't see a lot of people doing that. I mean, especially because it's a lot of older people. And I think that, I mean, people, when the Target breach happened, like I love Target. Like, I'm not going to not go to Target after that, you know?
I know what you mean.
I think people will still, I don't foresee Facebook being completely harmed because of this.
Yeah, another thing, because Facebook's been riddled with a bunch of controversy because they were trying to go against the fake news that's been spread around Facebook. And but what they've been doing is they'll take left-wing outlets like CNN, good gosh, Wire, like Huffington Post, Times, and have been, saying that those websites are fine, but when it comes to things like Fox News or like Daily Wire, they put them on a list saying like, we don't trust these sources. They're the same thing. They're reporting the same stories, but because it's not,
other side of the aisle.
And I think it pulls into a bigger idea is that people talk about the growth of AI, and the problem with AI is that it doesn't have its own brain. It only thinks what it's told to think. And since people in Silicon Valley, I've heard, I don't know if you heard about the James Damore case. He's suing Google because he used to work for Google. They told him, like, hey, there's not an equal amount of women in tech as there are men. Can you do some research on it and tell us what you find? So he released a 10-page document that said, basically, the reason there aren't as many women in tech as men is because women are less interested in tech than men. However, here are some ways I can provide to make women interested in tech to balance out the playing field. And he got fired for that. And they said that he was sexist for it. And he went on a podcast and said that in Silicon Valley, they're trying to blacklist anyone who's libertarian or conservative. So it's like this whole tech industry is very, very left-leaning, almost to the point where, like I mentioned with the late-night comedians, they're not even liberal. It's because that's not an open mind. So it's like this whole thing where, Facebook censoring conservative news. We know about the secret Silicon Valley blacklisting. It kind of is really scary because I don't want the internet to be just one thought point.
Yeah, I'm like, it's all hitting me right now. This is like, it is. It is kind of scary to think about that. It's almost, I don't even know like what term to use for it. Like socialist maybe, where they all want you to see the same
Orwellian
ideas.
Almost.
Yeah.
So, because that's the thing that everyone liked about the internet is how unpredictable it was. But now everyone kind of knows what they're going to get, especially if the people in power. And I'm fine with everyone being in power being liberal. That's not the problem. The problem is if they want to start censoring conservative viewpoints, because that's not fair.
Right.
So,
exactly.
I think it also puts conservatives in an interesting position because they don't want as much government involvement, but now it's like, do we need government regulation?
Right.
Yeah, that's a conspiracy for another day.
The case, I haven't heard about the name, but I think I'm familiar with or have heard of the actual research that he did, but that doesn't surprise me that was the result of his research at all. And that's not sexist at all.
Right.
I mean, look at like engineering majors. There's probably fewer engineering majors that are women rather than men. Look at business compared to journalism. I have a class in the B school this semester, unfortunately, because it scares me. And that's where I see every single boy that's in a fraternity, basically. Like, that's just what I think of when I think of the B school. But, journalism, it's more, I see a lot more females in my classes. And that's just how it is.
And even then, it's like, because journalism has a majority of females, but if I'm a guy, I'm not calling for an equal amount of women and men either. That's just the way it is. You can't really control. And I also think, once you start forcing balance into the equation, you have to dig so far where it's like, okay, now we're going to start, if we want to even out journalism, half boys, half girls, we need to start taking guys who aren't even interested in journalism. So when we even out the playing field, men are going to look worse, And
I don't think it has anything to do with being sexist or anything. I think it's I'm terrible at math and science. So, like, of course I'm not going to put myself in a major that is more difficult. And the only thing that maybe is different is for males, I can see a lot of males that have grown up with like really strong masculinity in their lives probably could be thinking, okay, well, I can't be a teacher because that's a female job, so I have to do business. I need to make money. So, you know, like, I can see it maybe for that, but...
Which even then, I don't even think that's a problem.
Yeah, I don't...
And it's like the point of America is that you can come here and do whatever job you want. But when people are looking at diversity quotas, they often assume it's because of some form of sexism. So then they try to forcefully even out the playing field. But the playing field evens itself out, you know? So, yeah, that's a whole new topic for another episode you could even get into. So my other story revolving around pop culture has to do with The Simpsons. Last year, there was a documentary by a comedian. I'm going to butcher his name, and I'm probably going to be racist because I'm butchering his name. So his name is Hari Kondabolu. That's what I have written down. He made a controversial documentary in 2017 called The Problem with Apu. Apu is a character from The Simpsons. He made this whole case about how Apu is a stereotype of an Indian man who works at a store. And then in the trailer, they kind of do this outlandish stuff where they compare what Apu is as a form of blackface because he's voiced by a person who's white, which... He's absolutely right. You know, Apu is a stereotype of an Indian man, but that's also because every single character in The Simpsons is a stereotype. The show itself is a stereotype of American culture. Homer is an irresponsible dad. I mean, the episode that I was watching today, the family's heads were hurting because they spent so much time watching TV, and Homer went to, like, snap Bart's head back into its normal place, but then, like, put his head completely behind him. So it's like... Obviously, not every dad is like that. They're not literally, whoosh, but it's a stereotype. Right. Every character is. But the point that the documentary tries to make is that they don't like the representation. But again, it's a joking show. It reminds me of whenever I used to play games with my stepbrothers. My younger one would always be like, "Hey, can I play with you guys?" And we're like, "Well, I mean, it's an adult game, but sure, go ahead." Or we'd be playing airsoft or something. Then he would complain that we were shooting him, and it's like, dude, you asked to play. We're letting you play. Don't get mad. And that's what I think this whole documentary is basically saying. And so they actually addressed the documentary last night in their episode. It was a thing where Marge was reading a book to Lisa that was like a modern day version of The Princess and the Pauper, making a bunch of jabs at the political correctness. And it was kind of funny because the princess started out with no flaws at all because they didn't want it to make it look like that women had flaws because that would be sexist. But Lisa says, hey, if this character has no flaws, is there a point in the story? Because she's not going to overcome any flaws. And then Marge was like, yeah, you're right. In fact, something that was applauded 20 years ago for being offensive is now being condemned as politically incorrect, and then they turn to a picture of Apu. So they're kind of mocking the documentary, which, of course, the comedian was very upset about it, which comedians getting offended is a joke of its own because their point is to be offensive and push the line. But when they go, I don't like this, he basically said that the point of his documentary was to bring race to the table as an issue that we need to solve, and then implied that since The Simpsons made fun of his show, since they dared to make a little joke about his show, that they're being racist because they are criticizing their show, which again, that's not the point of it. They didn't say, hey, don't you not like this certain race? You know what I mean? They were just poked at. They're like, we know this documentary exists. We're not going to cut down on anything because our show represents stereotypes in American culture. So I really don't even know what the problem is.
I can see why it would be. I haven't really read into it.
Yeah, no.
I'm looking at a New York Times article right now on just like the back and forth between the two, but I can see how it'd be offensive because it is a stereotype. You know, to us, like, seeing, I don't watch The Simpsons, but, you know, maybe a dad isn't going to get mad at seeing Homer Simpson and be like, that's a stereotype of me, you know? Because, for example, I think it's an insurance commercial, and it's like, it's a group of, it's like kind of, it resembles an AA meeting, but it's like when I became like a dad or whatever, and like they have like socks and sandals, and one guy's like, all of a sudden I know I'm turning to random people at my son's baseball games or basketball games and saying that defense wins, and then like someone sitting next to him's like, well, everyone knows that, like, and they're like poking fun at like complete dads.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
But like, I think that's funny, and I think a lot of people
Yeah.
think that commercial is funny rather than offensive. But I think since there has been like a deep seed of racism in this country, it's different for people that are a minority, because if they see that as offensive, whereas like when we see a stereotype, we may not see it that way.
Do you think it would be more offensive if they included Indians in on the joke, or just didn't represent them or just didn't show them at all? You know what I mean? Because it's almost like if they're included, they're all in on the joke. But I almost feel like it would be more racist if they were like, oh, we don't want to get in trouble for making fun of you, so we're just not going to show you at all. You know what I mean?
I think it'd be better to not have the character involved rather than to have a character that a lot of people from that minority see as offensive. Because if you have, I mean, you can involve that character, but just don't have him be the stereotype that people are saying is offensive. You can change his character to something else.
But, well, because I thought about that too, but I almost thought, I feel like that would be inorganic for the show, because if everyone's being made fun of and then they bring in a minority and then they don't make fun of him at all whatsoever, everyone would be like, well, that's kind of weird. Notice how this character isn't.
Well, they can make fun of him, or they can have comedy around him, but they don't need to do it in an offensive way. Like, comedy doesn't always have to be offensive to the race itself. He could be...
Well, that's the thing. They don't ever attack the race itself.
Well, saying like, here, what was it? Like in the picture, the framed picture that they pan to in that shot says "Don't have a cow," which
is
jabbing at his religion.
But that's a phrase from The Simpsons that has gone on since the start of the show. That's a quote that they've always brought up, because I did see that tweet, and that's yeah, and that's kind of why I'm saying that. You know, I would love to talk about the issues of race in this country, but I think the problem that he made is that he picked the wrong example. So I think if he found another example, or just said, hey, can we talk about the racism that Indians have faced, Indians have faced in America, I'd say, yeah, sure. I think if he did that instead of saying, notice how this character in The Simpsons is awful, you know what I mean? It's almost like, but at the same time, I understand he had to get something that everyone recognized in order to get this conversation going. So I support the conversation. I just don't support the way that he went about doing it.
The documentary person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And he says that, you know, it's not really about The Simpsons, it's about the conversation. But I mean, in the trailer, it's just everyone saying, I hate The Simpsons, I hate The Simpsons. So it's like, it is about The Simpsons. It's not as much as part of the big conversation as he says it to be. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see where this goes.
I'll have to maybe watch some snippets of that involved in it, so I can kind of get a better grasp on everything, because it's kind of hard to
I see what you're saying.
You know, if I haven't seen it. Yeah, it's interesting.
But yeah, let's see. Are there any other stories we have for today?
I don't have anything else for the day.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of the KPC podcast. Be sure to tune in for Wednesday when we have our regularly scheduled broadcast. I'll see you later.
See ya.